Okay, we're back. Bryan Garris coming in hot. What's up, dude?
What's up? How are you?
I'm okay. Having a bit of a day. We're almost done here. You're actually my last guest and the last guest of the event. So thank you for being a part of this. If you
Yeah,
don't
thank you so
know
much for having me.
if you don't know who Bryan is, he sings for Knock Loose, which might be the I'd say it's probably the biggest hardcore band in the world right now from the newer generation of bands. And I know you have a lot going on with your own charitable work with Knock Loose and are busy. And Kentucky is obviously such a hotbed for what's going on right now. So thank you for taking a few minutes to come on here and talk with me.
Yeah, of course. Happy to be here.
So what I've seen Knock Loose doing a lot online right now. You want to catch me up and everybody else of like what's going on? Because I know there's like some new shirts and some charitable things that you have in the works. So why don't you let everybody know what the band's up to?
Yeah, so we're signed to Pure Noise Records, and if you don't follow them, they've done a couple things when it comes to like auctioning test presses or various merch items, and some of our things have been included in that. But for us specifically, we were a part of a T-shirt with a band called Dying Wish from Portland, Oregon. The shirt helped raise money for Portland bail funds and Louisville bail funds. And then just the other day, we released our own shirt. Well, not our own shirt, but we were approached to do a shirt with grew the idea into this idea between a bunch of different bands. And we probably could have reached out to more, but we just wanted to get it out so soon that we were just like hitting up friends and being like, "Do you want to be a part of this T-shirt?" So that way we could get all these different bands posting about the same thing at the same time. So like just focusing more on one specific thing rather than everybody doing their own thing. And it was like us and Counterparts and Jesus Piece and Kubla Khan. It ended up being like 11 bands total on one T-shirt. So the focus is definitely not knocked loose. It's just everybody
Yeah,
kind of coming together to focus on one thing.
I thought that was cool. I saw that shirt, and it's funny. We were like talking about doing a shirt with the charity event, and then I caught wind that you guys were, that was getting organized, and I was like, you know what? Let's get out of the fucking way because we're sharing a lot of bands and stuff, and I was like, it would be annoying. It would be. There's no reason to like have two competitive items with a lot of the same artists. So we almost did a shirt until I saw that, and I was like, that's done. So let's keep a lane
Yeah.
open for that one. But I heard it's doing really good, which is awesome. And it was cool to see um, a whole bunch of bands from, our world organizing that and getting it up there. I honestly like you guys and even like Pure Noise, like definitely a shout out to Pure Noise. They've been really active right now. And we talked with a few owners of labels, but I would give some credit to Jake today because he's come through with a lot of donation stuff and he's supporting all of these bands doing stuff. He was very supportive and helping to organize this suit too. So Pure Noise is definitely doing its part. And in a climate where a lot of labels are kind of silent right now, and which is pissing off a lot of people, it's nice to see the people that we work with on a regular basis stay active and involved in helping to further the Black Lives Matter movement. So good on you. Glad to
Yeah.
see that the band's doing what it's supposed to be doing right now. This is awesome. I'd love to talk to you a little bit about Kentucky because, I mean, obviously you're right outside of, it's like you're pretty close to Louisville. Everything that's happened there with Breonna Taylor and like the reaction to that and the reaction to how it's escalated with the George Floyd killings and the protests that are going on there. Like, have you guys been out to any of the protests? Like, I'm curious what the climate's like there because I mean, this is like ground zero for where some of these issues took place.
Yeah. Yeah, we've been to several of the protests in Louisville and um which for me personally was my first time ever going to a protest. But this like Breonna Taylor happened in early March and it was like I feel like kept quiet for a long time or just not really like focused on for a really long time and I didn't really see any like news stories about it until like early May, like right before George Floyd. So I feel like once things started to gain traction online and news started covering it, that people were already here in Louisville, like fed up, so to speak, and like they were demanding justice and they were meeting. And when we got to meet with them, it was like it was a huge eye-opening experience, and like um, it has had its days where it's been more hectic than others. But for the most part, they're huge, peaceful gatherings um, that I'm grateful that I was like in a position where I could be a part of them.
Yeah. So it's funny, like, to be able to be peaceful in a community that's experienced the injustices like it has, and then to see other places around the world have protests escalate and stuff. It makes me question like why this can go off without a hitch and other places, you know, and other places turn violent. Is the police presence in Kentucky, has that changed? Because I know there's been, there's been policy changes put forward since Breonna Taylor was killed, and I don't think the police have been held accountable for it. But I'm wondering if any approaches to dealing with the Black community, or if any approaches to dealing with the protesting has actually like shifted since these moments, because there are, for example, there are radical changes being presented, in Minneapolis right now, and I'm actually just not up to speed maybe as much about what's going on there right now.
Yeah, so they did. None of the police officers regarding Breonna Taylor's case have been held accountable whatsoever. One thing that has happened is they passed Breonna's law, which now no longer. Yeah, so anybody that hasn't seen that, they now no longer allow no knock warrants, which was what happened the night that Breonna Taylor was killed. They entered her home on a no knock warrant, and which is an insane thing to say out loud. But they have passed to where that is no longer an option.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's hypocritical that they can outlaw the action but not hold the people who committed the action that is outlawed accountable for it. And I'm surprised it's going as calmly as it is in Kentucky, but I'm thankful it's peaceful or nonviolent.
It's definitely had its like wilder moments, but like I said, for the most part, it's very peaceful, and it was an opportunity for me to be there, but mainly to listen and to just absorb what the community is trying to say. Like it's not, and I was grateful to have been able to be there.
Yeah. A lot of what we've talked about on this event, is kind of centered around communication and listening. And I mean, there's so much to absorb over the last 2 days, but I mean, that's been a big takeaway from a lot of the speakers and a lot of, the Black artists and guests that have been here, was like, we need to start listening more, and we need to work on the ways we communicate. And I think going out and being on the ground and, being silent for a minute and taking in what's there is probably going to do a lot of positive stuff for a lot of people like me and you right now. So I'm happy to see that you guys are, that you're out there and doing that. For better or worse, I do think you're a important voice in this community, and I'm sure it puts some pressure on you to, be aware of everything that's happening, because being the center of attention in a world of music, it comes with those types of pressures and responsibilities. And I'm happy that you're the type of guy who is staying involved and doing your part to listen and be aware right now. So thank you for doing that. And a lot of the kids that look up to you, we'll be able to we'll be able to have conversations with you now and communicate and hopefully further this conversation. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about coming up in the Midwest too, because I didn't have too many people from the Midwest on throughout this. There's a lot of guys in cities and other countries and stuff, but I mean, Louisville, you know, is I call it deep in the Midwest. So there's definitely, you know, Oldham County and the area where you guys are from is definitely, you know, it's definitely had a rocky past. So like being a kid growing up there, like your experiences with racism, is there anything you want to share about, you know, what you've learned from that, what you've discovered in that culture of the Midwest, you know, now that you're out and have seen the whole world 10 times over? I'm sure you can sort of reflect on your upbringings there.
Yeah. Well, like first of all, I can only speak on my experience as like a white dude. I can't speak for anybody else. So I personally didn't experience it, but I feel like, I mean, a lot of people argue whether or not Kentucky is the South or the Midwest. So a lot of people thinking it's the South have like a certain like stereotype around it, and a lot of people that have never been to Kentucky have a lot of like a different view about it. And I think that like growing up, I was definitely aware that it existed, but at the same time, like Louisville is a very progressive city, and it's the largest city in Kentucky, and I would say that it's a lot more progressive state. But like I said, I can only speak from my personal experience.
I'm glad to hear. I'm glad to hear that Louisville is coming along, but at the same time, this stuff just happened there, you know, and I think it gives you the perspective of like, you know, we had talked about this earlier too, but just because, you know, a place seems like it's a progressive place in this like peaceful, nice area and people are forward thinking doesn't mean that these kind of racial inequalities and this police brutality doesn't exist, you know, and I think it's been very eye opening for a lot of people to be surprised to hear that some of these places in the world, like, oh no, it's there. It's very embedded and you know, the places that should be further along, in the movement for change are in fact not at all, you know, and it's a problem that's now surfacing and being, you know, it's right in everybody's face now. And I just hope that everybody can take a minute to learn about why that is and understand why these places that we had blindly held in our minds as progressive, you know, cities and towns are actually in fact maybe not, you know.
That's why I think that like listening is so important during this time period, because like I said, I can only speak from my situation of being like a white person, and like I think that for a lot of people that have never had to face those kind of injustices or the prejudice that people of color have to face, there's a lot that they could learn from it, and they'll never feel that, and they'll never be able to feel that. But I just think that listening is so important, because it seems like to me when I hear people on the other side of the argument that they just don't want to listen. It seems very simple to people like you and me, but these people want to like fight the smallest points while ignoring the bigger picture.
Sure. I mean, this polarizing climate that we have right now misses the big picture all the time, you know, and literally the Black Lives versus All Lives Matter, you know, the division in this country is a case of missing the bigger picture, you know, and of like, you know, we had a conversation earlier with Carl, who, you know, not to put him on blast, but you know, he was honest with himself and came on here and said, like, I didn't get I had the wrong argument in my head. And I was like, oh no, it's not Black Lives, it's All Lives Matter. And realized that the semantics, he wanted to agree with the sentiment of the Black Lives Matter movement, but he was arguing on some semantic kind of bullshit for a while. And then it took him a second, but his perspective changed like drastically. And now he's fully on it, but it's like it takes learning, listening, understanding, communicating correctly, working, doing this kind of work to like, get yourself to this point. So it's good that your head's in the right place. I do look at you as sort of a voice for the next generation of, bands in extreme music and underground. And it makes me feel good to know that you're doing what I wished you were going to be doing right now. So I don't have a ton of time, but I do think I keep saying it, but I know a lot of kids look up to you, and I know that the messages from your band and you guys as people carry some weight. So is there anything else that you want to talk about on here while you have this platform? Maybe a message to kids who are fans of your band or kids that are coming up.
I just wouldn't be afraid to have these conversations, and like I think that we're at a point now where like we no longer have the luxury to not pay attention. I think that you need to pick a side, and there are going to be people that disagree with you. And like, if anybody has kept up with our social medias, the comment sections on the charity based merchandise that we've been doing is a war zone. And like, don't be afraid of that, because I'm glad that those people expose themselves, because those aren't the people that I want supporting my band. And at the same time, I would feel irresponsible not taking advantage of the platform that I have. By no means want to like be some kind of like I don't want the credit or anything, like I'm being some kind of hero, but I just know that like a lot of people see the Knocked Loose Twitter more than they see my personal Twitter. So I'm going to use that. And I don't think that people should be afraid to make those decisions in the future.
I agree with you, man. I mean, we've said it before. It's like, do what you can with what you have, find your lane, the way you can create the most amount of impact for positive change right now, whatever that is, even if that's just shutting up and learning so you can have a smarter conversation. Or if you're in a band and you have a following, using that platform to spread awareness if you're educated enough and have the right messages, or donating money, or being on the ground and protesting. It's like it's a combination of all these small pieces of a fight that everybody has to join now if we want to enact real positive change. And I can see that you guys are doing your part in every possible way you can. So I thank you guys so much. I appreciate you and respect you as a dude. And thank you for coming on this thing and talking.
Yeah.
And
thank you. I appreciate it, man.
I know it's hard times for, people like us and white kids in bands to like have to have these conversations, and especially publicly with how polarizing shit is and people can be. But, there's no more time to just sit around and be afraid to face shit and to kind of own up to our responsibilities and support our friends and our family and our loved ones in the Black community and forward this Black Lives Matter movement any way we possibly can. So thank you, Bryan. I love you, man. Let's take a look at this giveaway really quick before I let you go. We got a signed copy of the Blue Book. How many of these are there?
I think there's only like 300, but I could be wrong.
Yeah. I mean, this thing was cool. This is like a collection of photos that you guys put together, right?
Yeah. So I've been shooting film since I started touring. I actually have in the book, there's the picture of us in front of the van leaving for our first tour ever.
That's awesome.
With Greyhaven, where we all shared one van. And then also we spent an entire year touring with a photographer named Tim Kayam, who focuses more on digital photography. So I was always worried that I didn't have enough content for a zine. And then after touring with him, I realized that we could just put it both together. So it kind of documents the history and writing and recording A Different Shade of Blue, because he was actually with us at the studio with you.
Sure. Yeah. That's awesome. I think it's a cool piece of your history. Thank you for coming through with something awesome, with something cool. And yeah, man, I appreciate you. Keep doing what you guys are doing. I love to see Knocked Loose staying active, representing our community the right way. And yeah, we'll talk soon, man.
Absolutely. See you, bro.
Bryan Garris, Knocked Loose. Thank you, man.